What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to the channel for our next video in the Heroes and Villains guide. Today we've got Kylo Ren, and Kylo's a little tricky just because I've never been the best at using him, and I kind of figured it out recently as to why that was. He'll take a ton of damage because his blocking isn't the best, and I'm assuming that's because he has pretty good abilities. And he also regenerates a significant bit of health. Like he can go all the way down to, I think, 500 and still fully regenerate all the way back up to 750. So he can lose a full 250 health and still gain all that back. That is a lot in this game. I think Luke does 150, or it might even be 200, which isn't, I mean, that's still already a lot, but that's not near as much as Kylo's would be. And so it's just a matter of learning how to use Kylo the right way. But without further ado, let's get right into it. So obviously this first star card, Resilience, this is one that, I mean, should only ever be used for Heroes versus Villains. I'm pretty dead set on that just because you're not really always next to another villain when you're playing Supremacy or even Galactic Assault. Those are the trooper-based game modes, and you just kind of, I mean, if you're a hero, you want to be able to go off and do your own thing, and if you have that star card, you're kind of relying, not relying per se, but like you're not getting an added benefit unless you're near another villain, so you kind of have, I guess, an obligation to at least know where the other villains are at and kind of stay near them just so you can get the benefits of that star card. I personally don't use it too often, if ever, in a trooper-based game mode, but I'm not everybody. If you find that works for you, then go ahead. It's a great star card, an extra 20 damage plus 10% damage reduction. I mean, that's great. I already think Kylo is a pretty good villain to play as, so that added bonus right there is amazing. Now, Heroes versus Villains, when you're always surrounded by your teammates, or at least hopefully always surrounded by your teammates, that becomes a lot better of a star card to use because it's always in play. This next one, Bloodlust, I'm not leaving it up too long just because this is the card that I always have on, regardless of the game mode, regardless of who I'm playing with. It doesn't matter the map. I pretty much always have it on because Frenzy, I believe, is his single-handed best, I guess, ability that he's got. It will allow you to leap and get enemies kind of from far away, and it will also allow you to slash multiple times with a ton of damage, and it pretty much locks on and automatically slashes that enemy. So if you're within that distance, you will slash that enemy regardless of where you're at. I also like the fact that if you combine it with the Harsh Pull star card, you can pull enemies in, deal some damage to them with that card, and then you can also finish the heavies and the special troopers off with your Frenzy attack. It's very good if you do end up taking a ton of damage as Kylo and you need to get some of that health back. You can pull a bunch of them together in one big clump and then use Frenzy, and since the lightsaber attacks already deal splash damage, like if there's two enemies in front of you close together and you slash, they're both going to get damaged by that. So same applies for Frenzy. If you're within close proximity of multiple enemies, then they're both going to get damaged by it. So I really like combining the Harsh Pull and the Frenzy attack. But regardless, I like to keep the star card on for whatever I'm doing. Alright, now I figured I'd just throw this one in as a immediately after. Harsh Pull allows your pull ability to now deal 50 damage, which I honestly think they kind of robbed us on this one. I feel like pull should already do damage, and if you don't have this star card on, it kind of makes pull pointless. I mean, it's not completely useless. It is nice because you can pull enemies together and then use Frenzy and deal just a ton of damage to, depending on how many enemies you got. Like, let's say you got 3. You pull 3 enemies together, it kind of clumps them together in front of you, and then you could use Frenzy on them, and that's 3 enemies you're hitting at the same time every time you swing that lightsaber. So, I mean, I guess pull isn't a completely useless ability, but it does make it significantly worse that you don't do any damage. So for me, this is another one where it's just kind of like, it made sense to me to have this on pretty much at all times. There are occasions where I'll swap it out in Heroes versus Villains just so I can make room for other cards, but in trooper-based game modes, it's pretty much always on, because that 50 damage can be the difference between you one-hitting a trooper on the next lightsaber swing and you needing 2 hits. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but in games like this where it's like you need to get kills fast and a lot of them, you're going to want to be able to kill as quickly as possible. So that 50 extra damage or 50 damage period on that harsh pull, plus the lightsaber swing, should finish most enemies off immediately, or at the very least it'll allow you to do your frenzy attack. Power Reach is also a good one. It just extends how far you can pull someone, so you get an extra 30% range, I guess, to pull someone that's further away from you. It is kind of nice, but it's not really something that I like to keep on the regular. It used to be one of the main cards I used. I think even in the footage here, I still have it equipped, but it's been a little while since I guess, used that card as like a main card for Kylo. I used to think pull was pretty much his best ability, but then I realized how few times I would actually get kill streaks with Kylo. I'd get a good solid 20 to 30 here and there, but I never pulled in anything crazy when I had that card up. I never pulled in the 60 plus kill streaks where I'm just absolutely dominating in a game. But ever since I switched that out for the extra frenzy damage, I've been doing significantly better. Berserking Tantrum is another star card that I've been pretty obsessed with actually as of lately when using Kylo. I used to not really mess with it at all, regardless of the game mode. I just kind of kept it off. And lately I've been realizing that if I'm trying to get on those 30, 40, 50, 60 kill streaks that are common in Supremacy and Galactic Assault, it helps so much if you have extra striking stamina. I didn't realize what a big difference it made. Like 20% does not sound like a lot by any means. So when I put it on for the first time in, what is it? It's got to be like a year since I've used Kylo pretty rigorously. So when I put this star card on, I was actually pretty shocked at how much of a difference it made. And now it's something that I just can't believe I never had on before. And it's something that I don't really think I'm going to take off anytime soon when playing as Kylo. It's just, it makes such a huge difference in the amount of stamina you're going to have when you're out there trying to get on those big kill streaks to impact your team in a bigger way. So I say this is one of the 3 cards that you need to consider as maybe never taking off, even if you're in heroes versus villains, but especially in those trooper-based game modes. Just because even though his blocking stamina isn't the best, his striking stamina isn't bad, but in all the clips that you're seeing right here, I have that extra 20% on. So imagine how much I'm losing right now when I strike. Imagine how much you'll be losing if you don't have that card on. So it's just something to consider. I'd even try playing in co-op a little bit with that star card and see if you notice enough of a difference to where you think it's worth putting in your lineup. But I definitely do, so this is a recommendation from me. So next would be Total Control, and I don't really recommend this card, period, but if you're gonna use it, please only use it in the trooper-based game modes, the ones where there are a ton of enemies on the other team, not heroes versus villains, and definitely not Hero Showdown. Hero Showdown, the card is absolutely useless, since the card states that it only works if you have frozen 3 or more enemies. That's 3 or more. In Hero Showdown, the most amount of enemies you'll ever have at one time is 2. In Heroes vs. Villains, the most enemies you'll ever have is 4. And the likelihood that you're fighting all 4 at the exact same time and they're all within range of your freeze ability is just so low, it's almost never worth having if you're in a hero-based game mode. In a trooper-based game mode, you may have a lot more situations in which it is useful for you to freeze 3 or more enemies for a long period of time. However, since that doesn't happen often enough, in my opinion, or even if it does happen often enough to you, it's just, I don't think freeze is one of his better abilities. In fact, I actually think it's the worst of his 3 abilities. I would so much rather someone focus more on the harsh pull, regular pull, frenzy, the advanced level of frenzy where you deal more damage, the longer leap frenzy. I mean, pretty much anything but freeze. Freeze is kind of that ability that I'll look at if I've got a lot of if I've got friendlies near me, especially Captain Phasma. I'll think about freezing someone, and then I won't go after that person myself. I'll let Phasma or all my troopers around me that have blasters just unload into them. Because the second you, as Kylo, attack someone who you have frozen, they become unfrozen and then can move and defend themselves. But if you freeze them and your friendlies are attacking them, they stay frozen for the duration of however long that freeze would have lasted. And that will most of the time give Phasma the ability to completely eradicate their health, or if they're a hero and have a lot of health, it'll get rid of a lot of it for sure. So Solid Freeze I'm going to kind of group in with In Full Control. I don't really recommend it because Freeze is not that great of an ability in my opinion, and even though Solid Freeze doesn't have that 3 enemy requirement for it to work and give you the star card bonus, it still only increases its range by 30%, and I say only, 30% is a lot. At least in this game, 30% could be a long distance depending on what the base range is, and I did look into it. The 30% does increase it quite significantly, but as I've been saying, Freeze is just not all that great of an ability. I'd rather you focus those star cards on passive abilities like being close to another villain, or have those star cards focus on abilities such as Frenzy or even Pull by giving it damage. So I'm not really going to go too much more into that one. But that being said, one that I will go into is Power of Darkness. Power of Darkness is probably one of the best cards he's got. I mean, it's definitely in the top 4, and that's why it makes my rotation list. It is one that will constantly be in my possible cards to swap out, just because Frenzy needs to be the ability that you focus on. Frenzy is his best ability, and if you're not using that one every couple of seconds, then you're probably using him wrong. Basically, this card will give you 14 extra lightsaber damage after you've used the Frenzy ability, and while yes you only get it for 6 seconds, you get that 14 extra damage, which doesn't sound like a ton, but that's 14 whole hit points per strike that you're delivering. So for a hero, for example, it may not seem like a bunch, but it can add up to, let's say you're the one that's slashing down one of the heroes, right? You're slashing Luke. Normally it takes 5 hits. Well, now it'll take 4 hits after you've used your Frenzy ability. So if you want to use Frenzy on Leia, who's over in a corner shooting one of your villain buddies, use your Frenzy ability on Leia and then turn to Luke and start slashing him, and you're now dealing 14 extra damage per hit. So again, it doesn't sound like a ton, but it really does add up, and for those big health units such as heroes or even just some of the specialists, it can reduce how many swings you've got to take by like a whole ass swing. Or even if you've got friendlies by your side and you're slashing away, that's less damage that they have to deal to help you finish that enemy or specialist off. So it's really a card that's worth considering. Maybe not as your primary 3 lineup, because I don't even think I had it available. Well, no, I had it available, but I didn't have it used in this clip right here. It's just something that I'll occasionally switch in and out, but that one doesn't really have a game mode that I recommend. I mean, it would be great in Heroes versus Villains because they have a ton of health. It also is great in the trooper-based game modes just because for a specialist, it may only require you to hit that specialist twice instead of 3 times, or once instead of twice. It's just, it really is a card that's worth having because it allows you to deal more damage. So basic strategies for Kylo, since I'm kind of done with the star cards, is, as I said in the beginning of the video, Kylo can regenerate a ton of health. So the best strategy for him is get in there, slash a bunch, use your Harsh Pull and Frenzy like it's your best friend. Use Harsh Pull to bring a ton of enemies in. Once you've got like a group of 4 or 5 in front of you, use your Frenzy ability and then get all that splash damage going. Whichever ones you don't end up killing with Frenzy or Harsh Pull, go ahead and finish them off with your lightsaber strikes and then get out of that fight. That way you could regenerate a little bit of health, and you even gain some health by killing those enemies, because every hero and villain has the health on elimination passive bonus now, which is a lifesaver. Well, I guess Boss doesn't, but he gains his health back on his own. He doesn't need to kill enemies to do it. He just needs to escape the fight. So another thing with Kylo is, as I've been saying this whole time, he regenerates a ton of health, but for some reason his blocking is quirky. I don't know if that was done on purpose, or I don't know if EA pulled the plug on this game a little too quick and DICE was still planning on fixing it. I don't know, but his blocking's quirky, and if you are slashing and holding the block button, it will take him a little bit longer to actually block incoming fire, as opposed to if you had slashed and not held that button down and just, like, let's say you slash and then tap the, on PlayStation it's L2, on Xbox I'm sure it's left trigger, or yeah, left trigger. But if you click that after slashing instead of holding it the entire time, you'll pull up your lightsaber and block faster. It's such a small thing, but when playing this game, most of the time when you're playing as a lightsaber villain or hero, your natural instinct is just to hold the L2 button at all times, so you've got that block ready whenever you're not attacking. But that's not the case with Kylo. For some reason, it just doesn't work all the time. It's not going to allow him to pull up his lightsaber as fast as possible. So you want to avoid holding that L2 or whatever the block button is for you until you've actually done your attack or you've used your abilities. Again, not sure if it was a bug or not, but that's just something I've noticed when playing as him. Another thing is, don't rely on freeze, because sometimes it's a little bit buggy on if you actually freeze opponents or not, but definitely don't be afraid to use it. It's kind of like Darth Maul, where I think it was meant to be fixed. Darth Maul's spin attack doesn't always damage enemies, but it's not something you want to completely throw out of your little tool bag for things to use when playing as that villain. So same thing goes for freeze with Kylo. Don't rely on it, but also don't completely disregard it. Other than that, there's not a whole lot to Kylo. He's pretty much just like all the other bladed villains, where you can block, you can slash. It's very easy to stay alive as him. It may be hard to get those kill streaks until you get good star cards, but it is possible. You just need to figure out how to play as him with your team, but that's just the same for pretty much every villain you'll play as. So I hope I covered everything in this video. If you all have any extra questions, just leave them in the comment section. I'll be sure to get back to you, and I'll see you all in the next video. Peace.